We don't break horses here. We start horses, we connect with horses, and we build a solid foundation. Mutual respect with the horses is really important. The round pen is where the magic happens.
What is your why behind rescuing these horses?
If you have a gift and you don't share it with the world, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but you're doing mankind a disservice.
When do you know that you've made that connection with them?
They are the masters of silent communication. They hold space like no other.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the For Your Own Good podcast on location at the Cascade Trails Mustang Sanctuary. You can probably see if you're watching, we're in the horse pen. Corral. Okay. And I'm here with my good buddy, Chris Waldhaus, who is the owner of the sanctuary here and is doing a lot of great things by rescuing wild horses, taming these wild horses, and providing a service to the community. And Chris, what's up, man?
Thank you very much, Kassidy, for having me out. And I like that you use taming. We don't break horses here. We start horses, we connect with horses, and we build a solid foundation. You know, some of the old cowboy ways we do use, but there's new and improved ways to get a horse to connect with you and actually become a lifelong partner. And that's really the main objective here, right? We, in a time where horses are now used for sport, we like to use horses as companions, and building a solid foundation and a good connection is a great way to say that we tame these horses here. We don't break them.
And I saw a video of you, I think, taming a horse. I don't know anything. I've been around horses a little bit, but I don't know anything about the actual work of taming a horse, of taking care of like running a ranch. And I saw a video of you on the back of a bucking horse. Mm-hmm. I don't think there was a saddle. And you looked so in control of yourself, your demeanor, your presence. It looked like you were going to get toppled over, but then just landed right back down. And so help me understand what taming is or
Absolutely.
How you approach it.
I'm glad that you said I landed back down, because really I've ate dirt more times than I can say. But through eating dirt so many times, you really do learn a better control of your body and your balance. And there's a big difference between falling off a horse and being thrown off a horse. And when you're taming a horse, remember, horses are horses are the prey. So they look at us as the predator. So a horse's eyes are on the side of their heads. You can kind of probably see this horse here. She's smart enough to even, do tricks for us. She might even smile. Well, she's more interested in the camera. But so when you're starting at connecting with a horse, they are thinking, I hope I don't get eaten. And they want to make sure that you're not, going to eat them. So when you're on the back of a horse, it usually is them thinking, oh my gosh, they're attacking me. I might, and I'm just going to use this correction stick to back her up just a little bit.
Oh. So for those not watching, two horses came in, they were around the mics, and they were just saying hi, but he pulled out the correction stick, which is just a rope.
Yeah, some people call it a correction stick, some people call it a crop, but the dogs are more afraid of this thing than the horses are, and it's really just an extension of my hand to tell them to back up a little bit or give me a little space. Mutual respect with the horses is really important. We obviously couldn't be in the pasture doing this if they didn't respect our space. So that's another big thing. But yeah, to go back to what you were saying, it takes a lot of time to find your balance, to find the balance with the horse. But a horse is assuming that anything jumping on their back is a predator. They are right away very quickly going to say, okay, get off me. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. And they're going to be bucking and whatnot. So that's probably what you saw. A lot of these horses come from BLM roundups, or Bureau of Land Management roundups, which means they were wild at some point. So introduction to humans, their first interaction with humans is this removal from the range. They're run onto these trailers, and then they're put into the holding facilities. And so there's no gentling is what we call it. There's no process where you can touch the horse and just let them know that they're safe or that it's okay. And most of these horses, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but they have these freeze brands on them. This is the freeze brand from the Bureau of Land Management. All three of these horses standing around us right now have those brands. And what that is a specific unique identification code for each individual horse that's removed from the range. And with the removal, They go to what's called a holding facility. So there's not a lot of handling. There's not a lot of human interaction. So when they come to a place like mine or another rescue or their forever home, that's their first real introduction to humans. So with Mustangs, it's like to get them to even be able to come up to you and interact with you is a feat. To be able to put a halter on them is another feat, because they are, technically the wild horse of the Americas. And the most easy explanation I give to people to understand wild horses is, if you think of domestic dogs as domestic horses, Mustangs would be wolves. Yeah, it's a long process, but it's such a rewarding process. And I think that's probably the beauty of the journey in this, the amount of trust that's built, the amount of consistent, clear, concise communication that it takes. And they're interested in the chairs right now. So I'm just
you guys should really be watching
a little tap.
You should really be watching what's going on right now.
Just a little bit to give us some space, because we don't have this going on in the pasture often, so they're curious.
No, I can tell. One was trying to get at my hat a little bit, but you can feel the gentleness and the curiosity, and it's less about anything else.
Yeah.
And so I heard you say Mustangs are the equivalent of wolves. And what do you mean by that?
Man does not have his hand in breeding a wolf, right? They have their own family dynamics in the wild. They run in packs. It's the same with the Mustangs. They run in herds. Man has no hand in the breeding. They are very family orientated. They're extremely protective of their family members, whether it be elderly or young. So they're very similar to the wolf pack in a sense of the wild that they are. And I use it as the example, the domestic dog, right? It's born around people. It knows people its whole life. It's very comfortable with people. Whereas these horses, they've never been around people until they're captive. And so I really love that you spoke on the energy that you feel. They're more inquisitive than anything else. It doesn't have anything to do with like them wanting to be mischievous or nibbling on your hat or the chair. It's really like, hey, what is this? What's it doing in our pasture? How can we interact with it? So every once in a while, you might see me grab the correction stick and kind of tap them to get them away, but they're really not trying to be mischievous or even harmful in any way.
And so you mentioned the Freeze brand. What is that?
So the Freeze brand is very distinctive for each horse. It does have some common things. So the first letter in the Freeze brand is a U for the United States, and it really has its own like key, right? So like a map key. Certain symbols mean certain things. So the next symbol on the horse's Freeze brand is the year of birth. All Mustangs, just like thoroughbreds, their birthday is just a general January 1st. So they have a distinctive year of birth, and then they have a unique underlying identification code that says that horse is from, for example, the horse behind you is from Nevada. So her identification code would say she's from Nevada, the B complex, and a female. So you've got the United States, the year of birth, and then the distinct identification code for that specific horse.
And so who puts that brand on them?
That's the government.
So the government on BLM or other federal lands?
So BLM does the Freeze brand. The United States Forest Service will do a microchip, and then reservation Mustangs don't have anything. Unless the reservation wants you to know specifically, hey, this is our Mustang, then they will give them a specific brand for that reservation. So Chip's for the Forest Service. He can be a little nibbly sometimes, and he's a baby, although he's big.
He really just put his mouth around my fingers. He didn't bite me, so.
Yeah, so the Forest Service will give the chip, and the Bureau of Land Management will give the Freeze brand, and the reservations, if they want, will give the traditional burn brand.
So then the government is rounding up these horses, they're branding them, or they're chipping them, and so then why are they doing that, and then where do you come into play?
Amazing question. So, I really try to find the good in all things, and the reality is we live in a different world now, and horses are still a part of this world, but cars have taken over as the major mode of transportation. So the horse is now, pushed to the side. And the reality is, because of hunting, we have hunted most of the big cats, most of the wolves, and the grizzlies, which would naturally check some of these horse herds. And in America, we have a very high regard for horses. We don't eat them here, but everywhere else they do eat horse. but we do eat beef here. So a lot of the ranges are now being used for cattle grazing. So with both of those problems, the horses are being pushed into smaller areas, and they're called herd management areas, or HMAs. So technically, let's say this HMA can hold 1,000 horses, but because the natural predators are no longer there and they've been corralled into this herd management area, that area now has 2,000 horses. And the resources are being depleted because it's only sustainable for 1,000 horses. So the government comes in, they remove 1,000 of those horses, and they put them in what's called holding facilities. This year actually is the first year that we have surpassed the amount of wild horses in the wild versus wild horses in holding facilities. So where I come in, again, because in the world, a lot of places are domestic rescues, right? So if you think of it, like I said, and I use this reference often, if you think of it as places that rescue dogs and cats, there are quite a few, but there are not very many places that rescue wolves. So we are one of those few Mustang rescues that focus predominantly on Mustangs because they don't have anywhere else to go. And being the undisciplined horse, and what I mean by undisciplined is there are horses that are used for specific things, like quarter horses for reining and cattle, like warm bloods or hunter jumpers or thoroughbreds for sport. And the Mustang is undisciplined. So because it's not selectively bred, it doesn't have certain aspects that they look for in these sport horses. So it is the horse that majority ends up in slaughter. And when people adopt a Mustang, I think I guess the best way to say it is like the nostalgia of having a horse, it's there, right? But what most folks don't understand is that although this is a horse, it's never been around people. It's never had a rope on it. It's never had a saddle on it. So whereas you're thinking, hey, I'm going to adopt this horse and I may be able to go ride trails in a week or 2 weeks, you may not be able to touch that horse for 2 months. So it takes a lot of time. And in the world we live in, we don't have as much patience as we used to. So when we have phones that we can touch and at the touch of a button, it can be brought to my doorstep in 48 hours. If I get a horse, I'm probably thinking I want to go riding next week or tomorrow, and then I can't touch that horse for a month. I'm like, this isn't the horse for me. So it goes to auction, and auction, unfortunately, usually goes to slaughter. So
are there those types of horses out there? So people are finding like already tame or not Mustangs, I'm guessing?
Yeah, those are the domestic horses.
The domestic horses.
Domestic
okay.
horses. So you've got your, you've got your quarter horses, your Tennessee Walkers, your cold blood horses like Pasafinos. They act a little more warm blooded, but they're cold blooded. Most of the gated horses are cold blooded, and this is horse talk stuff. So some of the
I was gonna ask. Tell me.
Gated means that the horse moves a certain way. A gated horse, when you're riding a horse that transitions from the walk to the trot to the canter or the lope or even the gallop, it's going to change your seat, which means you're going to have to do something different, either by posting or two-pointing, and that's kind of how you're sitting or standing or both in your seat. Well, with a gated horse, you don't really have to change your seat. You can almost sit the entire transition of everything. So it can be walking, you're sitting. It can be trotting, you're sitting. It could be loping or cantering, and you're still sitting. So those kind of horses, the domestic horses, those horses, yes, even though they're around people and they've been domesticated, you still have to do the whole training and starting process. So the horse world is really, it's not as easy to navigate as people think, because most people see horses and they see them out riding and they're like, oh, that must have been, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But there is a very long process sometimes to get that horse to take a halter, to take a bit, to take a bridle, to take the saddle, to take the rider. And that's where all the training comes in.
And so tell me a little bit about that training. Again, like seeing you on that horse, is that something normal to tame them, or, like you said, some people say to break them, where you get on them every day and they're bucking and they're chomping and they're kicking and they're like, what is that like for you for each horse?
It's different for each horse. It's funny because a very dear friend of mine, she gave me the nickname of being a savage, because the only way that I knew when I came to her to train horses was the savage way, which was jumping on their back and teaching them everything from their back. And so in that case, yes, if you jump on a horse's back that's never had anything on its back, it's bucking, it's kicking, it's biting, it's rolling, it's doing all that. But if you take the time to ground train and do all the groundwork on the horse and basically teach them everything from the ground first before you ever get on their back, then some of them, there is no buck once you get on. It's an acceptance of the rider immediately. And even still, you can do all the groundwork you want with some horses and they're just going to buck. And there's nothing you can do about it. And the thing about that is it's going to take time in the saddle, because with time in the saddle, you're going to feel when that horse brings its hindquarters under and it's getting ready to jump, or when it's starting to buck, or you feel it tucking in and it's getting ready to try to throw you. All of that comes from time in the saddle, which is the experience of being in the saddle and having those situations occur, just so that you're ready for them. But it is really dependent on each horse. I say every horse has its own horsenality. And depending on that horsenality, that's going to determine whether or not that horse is trying to throw you off, or if it's going to be more accepting of you once you step into the stirrups.
And so when you said you teach them everything they need to know on the ground now, what are those things that you're teaching them that they need to know?
At first, the first thing you have to establish is trust. And the second thing that you have to establish is clear, concise communication. And then you've got to show leadership and then throw in and pour on and just give lots and lots of love. So establishing trust first is really just spending time on the ground, feeding them, being around them, not asking anything of them. And then the communication, there's a really amazing guy named John Lyons. He's an old school cowboy who did a video called Round Pen Reasoning. And I think it's a must watch for any new horse owner or even seasoned horse trainers, because the round pen is where the magic happens. And the round pen is that circular pen where the human stands in the middle and the horse is running around on the outside. And I have seen this go bad, because some people think that just standing in the middle with their correction stick, swinging it and whapping it at the horse to make them run around is the way to do it. And it's not. It really is a dance. And in there, it's almost geometrical, because there's an alignment that you have to have with the horse, basically to set them up to know that when you're standing in a certain position, you want them to move forward. And when you step into another position, you want them to stop and face you and what we call connect. Or when you step into another position, you want them to turn and face away and run the other way. And I think that there's a magic in threes. So you'll step in the front of the horse and stop them, get them to connect with you, turn and face you, and then send them in the other direction. And you usually do that 3 times to the left, 3 times to the right, and give them an opportunity to stop and lick and chew, which is a horse saying, hey, I'm processing what you're doing to me. I'm getting an understanding of what you're asking from me. As long as it's clear and consistent, meaning every time you step in that same spot, the horse understands go this way or stop and look at me. Then you start to develop that communication. And this is the dance, because at the end of the dance, you can connect with this horse. And when connected, you can go up to the horse and touch them, or you can turn your back and the horse will follow you around. So all of that takes place in the round pen. And that's really where the magic happens.
When do you know that you've made that connection with them?
It's automatic. And horses often operate off of feelings. So it's an automatic feeling that you get when the horse makes eye contact with you. They're processing, they're licking and chewing. You turn your back, the horse walks up to you. Now the horse is not afraid of you. It trusts you. It has established that you've communicated clearly that you guys are connected. And you can walk off and the horse will follow you. You know you have it when you can stop and the horse stops with you. When you start walking and the horse walks with you. When you turn to the left or to the right and the horse is turning to the left or to the right with you. I'd be doing a disservice to not bring up Monty Roberts in this. Monty is a phenomenal horse trainer and shows and demonstrates the connection very well. He was so good that the Queen of England brought him over to train her horses and train her staff. And he did it in a time where most cowboys were doing things the cowboy way. He did it in such a gentle and softening manner that he showed there's a way that we can do this without having to tie the horse's leg up, without having to stitch it to a post for a day and deplete it of water so that it's tired. By the time we get on it, it doesn't have the same amount of strength to throw me. So there's a lot of different people that I've, over the years I've studied and watched. And again, Clinton Anderson is one of those people. Linda Tellington Jones is one of those people. Buck Brenneman is one of those people. Darylyn Butler. All of these horse mentors, for me, they've helped me in honing my skills in the way I train horses, and also in the way that I teach other people horsemanship.
When I look at someone like you look like you've been doing this for 30 years, 40 years. I don't know how old you are, but
You'd be guessing right, because my mom was duct taping me to a saddle when I was 3,
okay.
pulling me down the trail on a pony line. And we call it a pony line, but I'm on a full-grown horse, and pulling me down the trail, and I'm just bouncing around having the time of my life. By the time I was 7, I had my own horse I could get on. I was fortunate enough to have a brother and sister that didn't like horses, but they had a horse. So it was like I had 3 horses. So I could transition from one horse to the next horse, and they would come ride with me sometimes, but it really was me doing most of the riding and exercising for those horses. And when I was young, my mom and my dad, they were basically doing all the tacking. And so I had no idea how to put anything on a horse. And we didn't have that much stuff anyway. So by the time I think I was probably, 13, 14, I could tack my own horse, put my own saddle on, put my halter and
When you
bridle
say
on.
tack, is that putting the shoes on?
No, tacking is putting your, saddle pads, your saddle, your halter, your bridle, your hack, whatever
Okay.
you're going to ride in.
Okay.
Shoeing is specifically putting the shoes on.
That makes sense. Shoeing is putting the shoes on.
Yeah, but because you bring that up, none of my horses are shoed. I barefoot trim all of my horses. Mustangs are not shoed in the wild, obviously, and they come barefoot most of the time. But even horses that come to me that are shod, because I'm not demanding these horses to perform certain duties or activities that require them to have extreme stability on their feet or traction, I don't have to put shoes on the horses. There are certain times where I think shoes are necessary, and we've advanced in technology now where you can actually have boots, slip-ons, strap-on boots and whatnot. But some of these events and activities require the horse to have very good traction on their feet. So the shoes in those cases become something that are needed. But yeah, I think when it comes to individual care for your horse, it totally depends on what you're doing and where you're doing it as to what you need to put on your horse. Because even with the tack, some people ride in English saddles, some people ride in Western saddles, some people ride in a cross between an English and a Western saddle. It just really depends on the sport, the comfort, what you prefer. It all comes down to the individual.
Okay. And so you grew up with horses, but then we were talking earlier and you were not doing this up until recently. So what is your why behind rescuing these horses, and tell me your backstory?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, I started this a little over 4 years ago. Backstory, I was in LA doing security, working at the Roosevelt Hotel, the West Hollywood Edition, driving some chic around in his Bentley and working horses. I was working at Sunset Ranch in Hollywood, and I worked out in Westlake and Calabasas area with some horse clients and even vets. When the pandemic hit, I had the opportunity to look around and see a lot of people weren't working and weren't really doing a whole lot, but they were collecting a check. And I just kind of felt like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm working my butt off and it doesn't seem like I'm getting a day off.
Mm-hmm.
So I really started asking myself those hard questions. Do I want to train other people's horses for the rest of my life and babysit adults? Or do I think I can do this for myself?
Correction stick.
Over the years, I had made so many horse connections that I thought I could do this for myself. I have all the connections that I need. I just need to figure out how I'm going to do it and where I'm going to do it. And so I reached out to a phenomenal horsewoman and mentor, and she's been in the trail riding business for over 50 years. She's probably got the most miles on a horse in the world. I mean, in the books, in the FEI books, she's got over 45,000 miles, but this doesn't count, like I said, her trail riding business, which is over 50 years. And I remember going on training rides with her at least 2 or 3 times a week, and we're doing 4 and 5 hour rides. That's a good 30, 40 miles. So all these miles, which translate into time in the saddle, put her in the position to be my mentor, as I believe that the best on how I can do this. So I reached out to her and I asked her if I could come and observe how she does things, and she was agreeing upon that. So I went down and I sat with her for a couple months, and her departing words to me were, you need to go somewhere near national parks, because there's always a lot of government land by national parks. And in order to get good horses, you got to have long trails and sweaty pads. And I think not only her, but Clinton says that a lot. You really have to put the miles on the horse. And so when I came back to California, I thought, I'm just going to jump on my bike and ride around and see, what these national parks have to offer. And I rode around, and when I came through Joshua Tree, and I was already a big Western fan, so I knew about Pioneer Town, but when I came through Joshua Tree, it really just had this Western vibe, this Western feel. And I remember asking myself, like, where are the horses? And then I immediately thought, oh, you're supposed to bring them. Mm. So there's a park here, the national park, and it really is a camping on first come, first served basis. So I just happened to be lucky enough to not be one of the first comes. So they sent me to what they call overflow. And overflow is, it's Coyote Lake, which we call the dry lake bed here. And the dry lake bed is at the end of Cascade Road. So I came down Cascade Road, and I saw the for sale sign. And when most people were coming to Joshua Tree, they were looking for boulders and Joshua trees. It was exactly what I needed. Flat land next to the national park, butted up against the Bureau of Land Management. So immediately I was like, this has got to be a sign. So I called the realtor, and the realtor happened to be the nephew of the owner of the land. The owner happened to love horses. They loved the idea. They were all for it. And I think when you open yourself up to the universe, and I'm going to kind of digress a little bit, going back to the pandemic, although I was working 3 different jobs and training horses on the side, I really started taking some time to read a little more and just kind of dive into who am I, what am I here for, what type of effect can I have on the world. And I came across this book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth. Mm. And the message that really stuck out to me in that book was, if you have a gift and you don't share it with the world, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but you're doing mankind a disservice. So I knew I had a gift with horses, and I thought, how can I share this gift with the world? And this is how Cascade Trails was born.
I love that you mentioned that, because that's a recent discovery for me, is that not pursuing your gift and your talents and your dreams is actually selfish, because the world can only be a better place and people can only benefit by you doing that in so many different ways. In just you putting that energy out there into the universe is going to benefit people. You doing the thing is going to benefit these horses and everyone that you serve. You doing the thing that you're meant to do is going to show other people and inspire them to be able to do the thing. And to not do that, and to know that you have that gift and to not do that, is a selfish act.
You know, you said a lot of good stuff in there. I'm going to pick out serve. Serve from that. We are here to be of service. And in an act of creating and doing and being of service, you're really displaying the God in you. And you're showing other people that there is God in you also, and that you have this power to create, and this power to serve, and this power to bring together, and I'm being really broad, but bring together humanity to show that we are all so interconnected. We come up with these disconnected ideas of how we're not all on the same mission to leave this earth a better place than what it was when we came here. No matter how we are in our personal lives, I think ultimately, deep down, we all want to make sure that our families are proud of us, that the people around us have respect for how hard we work or the things that we do and the talents that we give to the world and share with the world. So yeah, I'm right on board with that.
Tell me about the moment you said when you came to Joshua Tree and you asked where the horses were and you realized, well, I need to bring them. Tell me more about that moment, or how you felt, or how that came to you.
Yeah. So I was coming down Cascade Road. Like I said, I went to Coyote Lake, and for anybody that's ever been to Joshua Tree, they know it's like they call it a huge energy vortex, but it's also a very expansive imagination place, right? There's nothing here but the desert and the sky. And so you really feel like, the energy itself is expanding, right? So when I came through and I thought to myself, where are the horses? The immediate thoughts that came were like, they're dying, Chris. Horse people are a dying breed. They're very secluded. They're off in little parts of the world where no one really knows. And then I thought, well, how can we make this something that people know about? How can we open this up and bring back to life these horse people? And that was where it was kind of like, okay, this is where you bring the horses, because people are coming here. Joshua Tree at that time was seeing, I think, maybe 4 million tourists a year. Between now and then, I think we've jumped up to like 5 or 6, which shows that the people were coming here already because of the expansive energy that's here, of the openness and the creativity and the energy that it carries in itself. So what better animal to facilitate more of that creative energy than the animal that helped us create this entire existence anyway? Horses are those animals that we've been connected to from the beginning of time, and no matter who you are, at some point in time, someone in your family was probably on the back of a horse and transversing the country or the world or wherever. And just the power that they have, and I know we haven't got into this yet, but the amount of beneficial power in therapy and experiences that horses offer, I knew that Joshua Tree was a place that not only would be fitting, but would be accepting of the horse and the benefits that it could bring to this community.
Yeah, I think even more than the bald eagle, cowboy on the back of a horse or indigenous on the back of a horse is literally the symbol of America, right? It's how we started this country before there was a constitution, before there was a government, before there was anything. It was the West. I love that. Yeah. And I've heard you talk about horses being healers before. So just tell me more about that, and then how you're like bringing people to the horses or the healing powers of horses here at the ranch.
Well, with horses being healers first, we've got to tap into the fact that they are the masters of silent communication. So they hold space like no other. And sometimes all you need to heal is for someone or somebody or something to hold space for you. And horses hold space for you like no other. And also, because of that silent communication, they help you to hear more of your feelings. They help you to tap more into your feelings. Horses also have the ability to manifest a physical reality of your feelings. So if someone is frozen in fear with a horse, you can see it. Mm-hmm. So they have that ability to just manifest these emotions into an action or so that you can see what a person is going through. And then on top of that, they also help you to be present. Because they are so big and a lot of people don't have a whole lot of experience around them, there's never a more time where you're aware of your surroundings when you're on a horse or when you're around a horse, because you're like, okay, what's this horse doing? Where am I at? Where's my space in comparison to their space? So they just have a really awesome way of making you be in the moment. And I think with so many distractions going on in the world and just the things that are happening, it's very similar to the time that Monty was coming up, when most people were coming back from World War II and they had all that post-traumatic stress. I'm not going to compare the lockdown to World War II, but we are all coming out of a seriously different experience where we need something or someone to hold space and just let us be for a little bit. And I think horses have that magic. And I've tapped into that with the community and with also some of the schools that are here have been gracious enough to bring out their students. And most of these kids, they would say, were troubled youth or kids that were having problems. And it was funny to see that there were no problems here ever, because they were so present. They were so interested in what was going on at the time. They didn't have a chance to go back into their, whatever it was that was causing these issues. They just wanted to be in that moment with the horse. And you also see people communicating so loudly, like with those children, for example. I would see the kids communicating with the horse in the same way that the horse basically was embodying the adult. And the kids were communicating with the horse in a calm manner in which they wanted to communicate with the adult. But the horse was just holding space. It wasn't being judgmental. It wasn't giving any ultimatums. It was just holding space for that kid. So you could totally see when they were being gentle and kind and slow and very easy, versus where maybe in the classroom or in their experiences in life, they had to act on their feet very quickly, and they needed to make a decision that they probably weren't mentally or emotionally intelligent enough to make at that time. And the horse was just allowing them to kind of, I don't have any judgment here. If you want to be close to me, you can. If you don't have to. And it was really cool to see some of those, certain situations be worked through by these people.
I love that you were talking about holding space, because I think in my own experience, my own life, my own therapy and work, having the people in my life that have just held space for me has been really, really impactful. And I can't imagine how many kids today, with everything else going on, with the distractions that we have, like just need somebody or something to be able to hold space for them, to have that level of attention, even just to be present, and how impactful that can be. And so is that how much of your work is related to kids and helping kids?
I think it's really important to me that children have an opportunity to be outside first and foremost, and to have this kind of open space where something like a horse or even a dog or a goat or a chicken can kind of just sit with them and show that there is this, like, I don't have any demands from you. All I really want is you to hug on me or love on me, and I'm going to be right here wagging my tail or nudging up against you. And it's really just a mutual love and respect that sometimes, because of, certain situations with kids, that they just don't get. And I'm not saying that all kids don't get it, but it seems to be that a lot of kids are just, they're consumed in a lot of different things nowadays that don't put them outside, that don't put them around animals. So it's really refreshing to have something like that. And for me as a kid, it was something that I had, and I think it helped me to be more open and more social and more willing to be in situations where I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm open to seeing if this is going to be okay. And like I said, where we are now, we've all just come out of something where we're like, we don't know if this is going to be okay. What is going to happen? Is this going to happen again? Like, how do we deal with that? So I think for me, having this opportunity to provide this space is key because, first, there aren't a lot of places where people can go outside and be around horses and be around other animals nowadays. And the cities are so packed that it takes an initiative to start kind of a community farm or a community garden. And sometimes it takes the space that they don't have. And so I think that's probably been, one of the key points in this is making sure that there's a space for people to kind of tap back into something that was almost the norm less than 100 years ago, which has been just completely alienated today.
Yeah, when we got here and we decided to film right here, you asked how comfortable we were with horses. My wife is sitting over there, and I feel really grateful that I've been around animals, even just in a limited capacity, but I've been around horses a little bit. We've been outside. I used to have a terrible fear of bears, being from the Pacific Northwest, but even that's become less and less. And then I've been around other people that have had zero connection with nature, and like this would just be way too much for them, even just with the chickens off in the background or watching the goats or whatever it might be. And I don't know how to feel about that, because I know how I feel when I am around these animals and watching other animals coexist with us, and then knowing that you're providing the service to kids that could never have a chance or an opportunity to be able to do this. And so how often do you provide the service, or how could kids or families or classes?
So they usually reach out. We're pretty accessible through our website, and also Instagram is like one of the major advertising tools that we use. We just did like a National Day of the Horse, which is something that we'll continue to do. Families will reach out. Maybe one mother of a group of kids or their friends will reach out and say, hey, can we rent out the campground? Can we do a pony party? Can we have a camp out? And most folks will reach out. We also do initiatives like where we'll go to the school. Maybe we'll take 3 or 4 baby goats and let the kids interact with the baby goats. And then a parent or a teacher who's there at the time will say, hey, is there something that we can do? So it really just comes down to like taking action and reaching out and saying, hey, is this available on these dates? And our website is pretty up to date. So if you look at it and you see like, oh, these dates are open, cool, let's book it. But most of the time people could pretty easily find us online, and even just giving a call. And we do our best to accommodate. I think the largest group thus far that we've accommodated is 30. And we've got 2 groups coming in the next month or so that are 14 and 15. But it's families or like mentors with their students and possibly some of their children that will rent out the campground for a couple days. And during those couple days, we'll do an introduction to the animals and care and upkeep. And then we'll do an introduction to the horses in tack and grooming. And then as long as the children are, we try to make sure that kids are 7 and above before we put them on a horse by themselves without the pony line. But some 6-year-olds are really big and they fit in the stirrups, so we'll give grace to them. But if they're 7 or under, or they're just smaller, then we still put them on a horse. We put them on a pony line and we walk them around so that they can get the interaction with the horse like that. Also, we do a lot of like leading, because once a horse comes out of the pasture, the human, whether it be the adult or the child, is automatically thrown into a leadership position, because the horse is often looking to be led. Where should I go? And it has to trust that you know where you're going. So it's very like empowering to see these little kids that are, tiny leading these big horses. And it gives them that feeling of, oh, I can do this. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the most beneficial things that we do as far as like group setting for families and kids. Just the leadership skills and the activities that we offer with all of the different animals.
And then you do also like trail rides, right? So if someone wants to just do like a half day or an hour, I don't know.
Yeah, we do. So with the trail rides, they're pretty straightforward. We do rides in the national park. This year will be our first year that we're doing camp out rides. So you'll end up riding from here to, there's a place called Indian Cove. You'll stay here, you'll ride, you'll wake up in the morning, you'll ride to Indian Cove, you'll have lunch. We partnered with JT Excursions. They're the only people that have the backcountry camping permit here. So they will provide the backcountry camping. We'll ride into the park. We'll camp out with the horses, keep riding, camp out again. We'll get to a spot where we can trailer the people and the horses.
So you get to ride horses in the national park?
Yes.
Wow.
It's pretty fun. I've been in the national park quite a few times, and mostly on my motorcycle and driving the car, but I've also ridden in there now. And it's a totally different world in itself when you go in your car or on your motorcycle. But when you're in the national park on horseback and you're going down trails that no one's gone down and you don't see any footprints and there's no cars in sight, it really does like transition you in time where you feel like this is how it was before cities popped up everywhere and cars were everywhere and people are everywhere. So it's definitely a very unique experience. And there's a couple places that you can ride. Black Rock is one of the major places that you can ride. But, before the national parks were national parks, they were private property. And most people back then had horses. Mm-hmm. So there are so many horse trails in almost all of these national parks that are only accessible by horse. Mm. And unfortunately, not a lot of people have horses anymore. So not a lot of people get to go access these trails. So if you book out for the park rides, a 2-week window is kind of minimum because we have to set aside the horses to trailer in and whatnot. But if you book 2 weeks in advance, you can do a park ride. And this year, the park actually changed the rules to 6 horses at a time in the park. So, it's unfortunate that it's only 6, but you've got to book out in advance, and obviously you've got to fit within that number of the 6.
I mean, that sounds incredible. I don't think I've ever done anything like that. And being out in the desert, and if you've ever been to Joshua Tree or never been to Joshua Tree, when you're in town and you're outside, you can't even really see the inside of the park and like what's going on inside there. Then you enter the park and you're in this kind of moonscape valley. Yeah. And then as you get away from even the main little, the hot spots, you could call them, you're literally in the middle of nowhere. And then the landscape actually changes quite a bit with the density of the Joshua trees, the types of rocks, if you're on the south end or the east end of the park. And so to be able to access on horseback with a guide, it seems pretty rare, pretty incredible.
It's epic. It is.
Yeah.
The other really cool thing about this, and I don't know how much history you've heard about Joshua Tree, but from what I've heard, the town was pretty much created because of the gold mines that are out past Amboy. And those gold mines were really active until right around World War II when the copper mines started becoming more active. So because of the gold mines, pioneers kind of set up shop here so that people could come and get their wares and refill on whatever they needed while they were out there in the middle of nowhere. So when you get into the park on some of these trails, you really feel out there in the middle of nowhere, and it's very awesome and an assistant in your imagination to just kind of, think about where the world has come from, where it's possibly going, how you can affect the change. It really does come back to, like I said, that book, like it just gives you a place to find a peace of mind to where you can hear your thoughts, and the thoughts that you really want to amplify, you give attention to. And when you come out of there, whether it just be an hour or 2-hour or 4-hour ride in the park, you are a different person than when you went in.
Yeah. Chris, this has been absolutely incredible. You're an incredible human. Like, I can tell that you're trying to help people change the world. You're an entrepreneur that is driven by serving, and I love to see that. You're the type of person that want to highlight on this podcast, and it's kind of why I started doing this. Being out inside the corral is an incredible experience, and I feel very grateful to be out here. And so if people want to do the group rides, the park rides, the kids stuff with the kids, I think you can also, like, if they want you to tame a horse for them, that's a service that you provide, right? And so How do they get a hold of you? What's the best way? I know you mentioned the website, but what's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, my Instagram is Cascade Trails _JT. I have a personal Instagram as my name, Chris Waldhaus. But we do everything that you said. It's almost all horse-related activities that we do here. We provide accommodations for people who want overnight horse experiences. The beauty of this place and Joshua Tree in general is that because there is no light pollution, the moon and the stars light up the sky and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the ability to do night rides, which most places in the country do not have the ability to do.
Wow.
And we do all of those things. We do kid rides, we do pony rides, pony parties, we do train horses, we do lessons, group rides and trail rides. The other beautiful thing is we are the only trail riding business here in this area that can take out more than 6 people at a time. We have plenty of horses to be able to do that. So if you have a group of 12 or 13 or 14, we can accommodate that, whereas most places, they don't have that. And also, I'd really like to mention that most places have a weight limit for how much you can weigh to ride a horse as well. We are able to get past that because we have a couple drafts out here and some pretty thick Mustangs that can carry over 240 pounds. So if you would like to do anything, just reach out on our Instagram. My webpage is mustangsanctuary.com. We are pretty easily accessible on there as well. And then the phone number is 760-910-7220.
Perfect. And all that will be in the show description. You should definitely watch the video on Spotify. There was a moment that one of those draft walked by, and that's when I started to get a little nervous because the other ones are a little bit a little smaller.
The drafts are huge.
And then he started walking on by, and I was like, okay.
No, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming out, and I'm so grateful that you were comfortable enough to be able to come out here in the pasture. And I think that's a real confidence booster for most people to know that it's okay to be out here and interact with them. We've got cameras set up and we're doing microphones, and the horses are kind of interested in us, but not really.
Yeah, they really just want to hang out. So, Chris, incredible conversation. I appreciate you so much. We'll definitely be out, and everybody, please get a hold of him. Like, come experience this. If you haven't been to Joshua Tree, this is what you need to do. Don't just go in and camp and go to the normal spots. Like, go experience it for real. As always, love everybody. This has been For Your Own Good. Peace.